It's a real opportunity to be here to speak to you today. I think what I'm really going to do is I'm going to be doing the travel log version of the conference. I get to show some nice pictures and tell a good story, and also let you know what we're doing as a volunteer organization to try and make a difference in terms of land preservation and enhancement, particularly in southern Alberta. Western Sky Land Trust was established approximately 10 years ago. It started arising from a conference in Calgary called Breaking Ground back in about 1999. Some of you may have been there, but it was a broad mix of people from all parts of environmental and land sides, non-governmental organizations and private sector. And the idea was to try and look for a private initiative that would start to look at land preservation through different kinds of vehicles. And the concept of a land trust in southern Alberta arose from that conference. One of the things that we try to do with Western Sky is look at what our objective is. And we're trying to conserve our sense of place, a very, very kind of broad word. What does that mean? It certainly gives us a lot of scope to operate. We have, like most organizations, established mission, vision, and focus. We're trying to conserve open and natural landscapes that have important natural, agricultural, scenic, recreational, or heritage values. We're trying to achieve, in our vision, a significant and measurable conservation impact in southern Alberta, benefiting people and the environment. So how do we take those lofty ideals and then focus on doing something? Well, our focus is land conservation that contributes to watershed integrity in the Calgary region. One of the reasons that we focus that way is that if we took all of the acreage in southern Alberta, Red Deer South, and attempted to work our land trust mission and vision, we really wouldn't be able to deal with everything, and we have limited resources. So what we've endeavored to do is focus on the riparian environment in some of the major river systems in southern Alberta, primarily focusing on the Bow River, the Elbow River, and the Highwood. So we have 5 key values. Natural lands. We're looking at lands that provide habitat for wildlife, plants, and open spaces for people. Agricultural lands. One of the interesting things about the Land Conservation and Land Stewardship Act is that it recognizes agricultural values. So our organization is equally committed to looking at agricultural opportunities and preservation as part of what we do. Heritage lands, lands that keep us connected with our past, teach us about our history, and contribute to our vision of the future. Clearly, in the current time, sometimes we are too busy looking forward. We sometimes forget that what's around us is our heritage, and we have opportunities within a land trust model to look at those kinds of lands. Scenic lands, again, sometimes we take it for granted as we drive some of the most amazing areas in the world throughout Alberta, but certainly our focus in southern Alberta, driving Highway 22 and some of the areas there. Recreational lands. As a land trust, we are not focused on preserving and protecting and keeping people out. We have to find a balance in what we do with lands that involve the general public. It's not an exclusionary process. So our goal is to have a significant conservation impact. One of our past board members kept reminding us as we were working on our initial projects, it's not about all this other stuff, it's about getting dirt. And so we pride ourselves on being a nimble organization. We value what other groups such as the Nature Conservancy of Canada and the Southern Alberta Land Trust do. We've got the Cross Conservation Area that's just south of Calgary. There are groups that are doing similar things, but what we see that we do is provide perhaps a little more nimble opportunity, a little more flexibility perhaps in what we're prepared to do. Smaller organization, lower cost structure, able to look at site-specific issues and say, does that fit within our mandate, and can we make that work? So we're not limited by saying, well, we only look at quarter sections and above. We can look at smaller tracts of land. And in fact, when we started, we were also looking at the urban environment and saying, well, maybe brownfield sites could be part of our portfolio. And while we don't have any yet, it's not beyond the possibility that that could be part of our portfolio at some day. We're trying to work with people. We're trying to do this on a voluntary basis if possible. There are people certainly with a generational transfer of assets. There are people out there right now looking to ensure that if they're transferring land or if they're dealing with tax issues, that there's an opportunity perhaps to get some kind of credit for what they're doing. Sometimes there's a challenge in passing along assets generationally, and they look at an organization like ours and say, well, maybe what I want to do in terms of my own life will fit well within this organization, and perhaps it's a better fit than just leaving it with my family. We also recognize that there are many folks that say, well, I'm a good steward. Why would I need to give it to another organization? Well, to those people we say, well, that's fine. But if you ever decide that perhaps you want to ensure it and the preservation and those other values in the long term, maybe you should come and speak with us. So we like to think that we're able to talk to the diverse parts of the community that make up Alberta, all different personalities and characters that we deal with, and it's great. And we within our organization feel that we have a good dialogue with people within the Southern Alberta community. We understand that perpetual decisions are supposed to be forever. So we're patient. We're prepared to work with landowners over a long period of time and develop relationships, recognizing that perhaps while something today isn't working, tomorrow it may be a different scenario. And we're about stewardship. We recognize there's a large investment and obligation in looking after the long-term preservation and enhancement of land. So we've had some accomplishments, and you're seeing on some of the slides and the pictures here some really amazing pictures of lands that are very proximate to Calgary, all generally within an hour's drive. Beautiful lands that primarily focus on currently the Bow River and the Highwood rivers. So the Highwood Ridge Farm was a successful opportunity that we were involved with about 2-3 years ago. Landowners wanted to ensure that this land was preserved. However, it didn't fit in the conventional model in that they wanted to have a home acreage site, but 2 acres accepted out of the donation. And we were okay with that because we recognized that if they wanted a life estate so that they and their children for a certain period of time could continue to take some benefit out of the property, that was a worthwhile trade-off in order to preserve and enhance the balance of the site. So we've developed a long-term relationship with these landowners so that they continue to use the property that they've had for many years. It of course affected the value of the tax receipt that they were able to get because the appraised value of the land was adjusted accordingly, but it still worked out really well. And you can see some of the great vistas here in that area. There's still, some of the land is being used and farmed for, I'll call it a transition period of time, but eventually we are gravitating the site back to a more natural environment. On the Bow River, our focus has been down by the Carsland Weir, an area just southeast of Calgary. There is an existing provincial park down there, Carsland Wyndham Park. And so what we've done is to take advantage of that existing park area, and we're kind of tacking onto that. So our first project about 8 years ago was the Agrium Nodwell site, where we had a landowner, Jack Nodwell, who wanted to do something with his lands, recognized that they were a real asset adjacent to the river, the escarpment and toplands, and also the bottomlands and an undulating topography leading down to the Bow River. Agrium, meanwhile, has a plant nearby, and they wanted to partner up with us on that project. That was our first project. Now, adjacent to that, you can see the Bruce lands are also in the floodplain, flood fringe area, but they're lands that were fee simple title, and the landowner wanted to, again, make a contribution, and it was a great fit because it's directly adjacent to our initial project, Agrium Nodwell. One of our other initiatives as we're moving forward is that we're looking upstream of on the Bow River. So we've already looked at going downstream. We've done an inventory of lands. We know the land ownership currently. We've talked to many of the landowners. But our next initiative for Western Sky is to start looking at Bow and beyond, other parts of the Bow River upstream, and also the Elbow River upstream. And of course, everything that we dealt with last June and going forward is going to be directly connected with some of what we're doing in this initiative. The Bow River, it's iconic. It's an international significant road or significant asset, and it, however, is receiving increasingly intensive land and water use. Only 20% of southern Alberta's rivers have healthy riparian zones, that area between the water and the land that is so vital for a lot of the health of the river. The habitat, it's for about 80% of Alberta's species at risk. So we partner with landowners. We have an attempt to increase watershed awareness, and we're trying to work with the community stewardship and support. We have direct one-on-one meetings, as I mentioned. We engage and explain what we're trying to do, and we're seeking continually corporate and community support for what we're doing. Over the next 5 years, part of our Bow and Beyond initiative is to have a plan. And so we wanted to focus and have something that we thought was an achievable target for our organization. So we've targeted the acquisition by donation or purchase of 3,000 acres in 6 miles of river valley on the Bow River over the next 5 years. Now, these next shots are just some shots that we thought might be interesting. You can see some of our lands down in the Carsland Weir area. That's part of the flood. We've got some shots showing this site in the fall of 2012, wonderful colors in the fall. And then we see the same area in June during the height of the flood. Again, as a week later, some of the area already coming out of the flood zone. But obviously a significant series of shots because this isn't developable land, and if it was subdivided, it would probably go to the local jurisdiction as environmental reserve. However, often these lands aren't subdivided, and so there's an opportunity for us to partner with landowners to provide some preservation in a perpetual basis of lands that would otherwise not be managed. And again, here we see how things are already coming back by September. Amazing rebound. Agrium Nodwell, again, some fall shots, looking in the height of the flood, June 21, and June 26th, a week later, and then into the fall, amazing restorative capacity within the Bow River watershed. A little less restorative when you have a $2 million house, but that's another issue. I want to close by saying, coming from Calgary this week, we've had a big debate over this or this. And I guess that's the debate that we all kind of engage in what you do and what we do, is there a right answer? Do I take water from a tap? Do I take water in a bottled water version? Is there a right or a wrong answer? And I know the bottled water industry would tell me that they're environmentally good stewards, and I would know that the city of Calgary would tell me that the water that comes out of our taps, some of the finest water in North America. But I don't know that there's a right answer. And we don't know that there's a right answer for what we do, but we believe in what we're doing. We've got a plan, and we're attempting to continue to engage you and the public generally in what we're doing. We really appreciate your support of our organization. We are excited about what we're doing. We have a fully engaged board, got a great staff. And so I'm really pleased to thank your organization again for what you've done. I want to thank President Andrea Granger for her support, and conference organizer and Director DeRosier for what she's done and Fanny's done in organizing this conference. Thanks again to all of you, and appreciate your time. If you have any questions, there might be a few moments to answer questions.
Hi, Chris. So are you familiar with, well, you probably are, but the Nature Conservancy's recent conservation easement with the Waldron Ranch?
I think, yeah, absolutely. It's an exciting opportunity, and certainly a large landholding.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of on the leading edge of conservation, because it's more of an easement agreement where the ranch is still able to ranch the land. Are you guys looking to go more into perpetuum, where you just take the land out of production and restore it, or are you, like the Western Trust, would they be more willing to do conservation easements such as the Waldron?
It's a good question. In fact, we're looking at something very similar to Waldron in terms of scope and scale, and we hope that we'll have a significant announcement certainly before the summer. Extremely exciting. It's going to certainly take our organization to a different level, and it's going to be by way of a conservation easement. So the great thing about having a flexible tool like a conservation easement is that it really can be defined on a case-by-case basis, so that we can work with the landowner to come up with a formula that says how we'll manage it. Now, what the owner, and I always talk about land ownership as having a bundle of rights. If I own land, I've got many, many different things I can do with it. So depending on what the landowner wants to retain, they will get a different value back in terms of either a tax receipt or adjusted value on the conservation easement. But we're absolutely open in looking at all kinds of tools for land preservation and also functional land usage, because as I mentioned earlier, agricultural values are part of our toolkit, and one of the things that we recognize as an equally important asset to preserve and maintain.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.